Matt Bernier Show. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. This is the recap edition. Going to go back and take a look at the three major Kentucky Derby preps this past weekend. The Tampa Bay Derby, the Gotham, as well as the Jeff Ruby Stakes. Then we'll lead into a little bit of a stakes montage, quick hits, go through and give you some just little bite-sized pieces coming out of a number of different races, give you the weekend's best as far as buyer speed figures are concerned, and then we'll wrap things up with DRFTV schedule of events coming up this week. You can listen to this in podcast form everywhere: YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. If you're over on YouTube, click that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, make sure the bell icon's lit up. If you're over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, iTunes, however it is, subscribe, write, and review. Questions, comments, concerns, either beneath the video player on YouTube or to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Let's kick things off with the biggest one of the weekend, in my opinion, the Grade 2 Tampa Bay Derby down at Tampa Bay Downs. Mile and a 16th on the main track. Let's take a look at the field. 11 of them were signed on. Post-time favorite Win, stretching out in distance for the first time. Very talented horse from Michael Trombetta. He had to just really answer that question about how far does he really want to go. Outside of him, you had a horse like Dreammaker coming in from the fairgrounds. Visually very impressive, winning his most recent start. The form of that race had come back and looked solid. What would he do here? Well defined. The winner of the local prep, the Sam F. Davis. How would he fare with a likely different pace situation signed on? Well, we found out all of those things relatively quickly. A fresh face ultimately prevailed. Here's the stretch run of the Tampa Bay Derby.
Swings to the center of the racetrack. They're into the stretch. It's still Zenden trying to hang on. Win is way out on the outside. Up on the outside, running is Outshine, now gaining ground, and toward the rail is Lord Dragon. Down to the wire, it's Tacitus going to the front. Tacitus strikes to the lead. Tacitus to win the Tampa Bay Derby. Outshine is their second win.
Tacitus gets the job done for Bill Mott and Jose Ortiz at odds of 8-1, almost 9-1 on the tote board. He finishes ahead of Outshine, who runs second at 6-1, and Win, your post-time favorite at odds of 7-5, rounds out your trifecta. Let's take a look at Tacitus a little bit more. He's 2 of 3 lifetime, just over $250,000 in career earnings, owned and bred by Juddmonte Farms Incorporated in Kentucky, trained by Bill Mott. Ridden victory by Jose Ortiz, and you can see the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He is by Tappet out of a first defense mare named Close Hatches. I'm sure many of you remember her successes throughout her racing career, and now she has a very successful son. Tacitus earns a 93 buyer and a 117 Timeform US rating. Timeform US had the 1.5 mile splits color-coded red, meaning the pace was fast, helping a horse come from off of it, whether it was Tacitus or Win, and perhaps working against horses that were up there forwardly placed, whether it was well-defined sitting in second or the horse cutting out the fractions in Zenden. Also worth noting, Timeform US had the main track at Tampa Bay Downs as slightly speed-friendly, so perhaps that helped carry some horses, but again, I do wonder if this a little bit, does the pace situation mitigate the potentially speed-friendly nature of the racetrack on Saturday afternoon? Some things that you as a handicapper need to decide. I'm very torn on this race as a whole after going back and watching it a few times. Let's begin with the winner, Tacitus. I thought this was a very nice effort. Considering it was his first start since the beginning of November, first time going 2 turns, first time going up against winners in a graded stakes race, first time away from Aqueduct. He had a lot of things that were new to him, and he handled them all very, very well. I had said in the preview edition of this podcast last week that I was unsure if this would be a little bit too much too soon, but perhaps Tacitus was the long-term play. He was the one that maybe you want going forward, maybe not in this race on Saturday. Well, I was wrong there, but I do wonder still if he is the one that you want going forward, just simply because he is lightly raced, he's in good hands, and he looks like he does have some upside. I think he's still on the green side. On the far turn, it just seemed like he was sort of spinning his wheels a little bit till they got to about the quarter pole. Then he started to find his stride, and really, other than that, he had a pretty good trip, though. Split horses down on the inside. Jose Ortiz, after the race, said still a little bit green, kind of pulled himself up when he made the front, but he galloped out very, very well. He seems like a very promising and exciting prospect going forward. I'm unsure what to make of this race as a whole, though, because I see a horse like Outshine, who, sure, he was relatively close to those hot fractions early on. 22-3, 45-4 for a half mile. And turning for home, he looks like he is in prime position to take this thing over and just absolutely rip everyone's throats out. And instead, he just kind of bounces up and down the lane. and somehow still finishes second. He finishes in 31.95. For comparison, of the top 6 finishers, that was the second slowest. The only one that's finished slower than him was Zenden. And I understand perhaps part of that was because he was relatively close to the pace and it took its toll. But so I see that and I go, all right, I don't know what to make of that. Then I see Win Win Win, who for the majority of the run I thought was just spinning his wheels. He was out in the clear. I think Irad rode him just fine. You're on arguably the horse to beat based on the numbers and based on the wagering. Last thing you want to do is end up some kind of a terrible trip and X, Y, and Z. If you think you're on the best horse, allow him to have some run. He's trailing behind. Okay, the pace perhaps contributed to that. But then he was just kind of even around the far turn. And I'm looking at it going, all right, well, this isn't going to really work. Then he starts to kind of find his stride turning for home. But then he, as well, is just kind of up and down. But even having said that, sort of up and down, but it's the second fastest or the third fastest come home time in the race. I look at that effort and I go, okay, I don't know if I love that. Wasn't terrible, wasn't offensive, but it wasn't good. And then Zenden is really the one for me that makes this whole thing sort of, maybe not full red flag, but half red flag. Zenden is a horse that the ability is there, the talent is there. But when you went back and watched his most recent start, he didn't change leads. He looked like the distance was not necessarily going to be his friend, the additional distance. Now, you can say that the speed-friendly nature of the track benefited him, but you can't argue that the fast fractions early should have taken a toll on him. And when he's only beaten by, maybe 3 lengths, it does make me wonder a little bit about what we saw in the field as a whole. We're not going to know until these horses exit this race and come back in whatever their next start is. And I still, even having some reservations about this field as a whole, I still think Tacitus is a nice horse, and I think the upside there is tremendous. He's the kind of horse that you look at right now and you say, this is a stock that is already high, but it's only going to go higher leading up to his next start, which I'll get to here momentarily. The rest of the field, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. A horse like Sir Winston, who is just lollygagging at the back of the pack, looks like he's not going to put a dent in this thing. All of a sudden, he just turns it on down the lane and finishes with the flurry. He finishes faster than anyone else in the entire field. Now, he came out of that race up at Aqueduct, the Withers, which, okay, I mean, from a number standpoint here, at an 86 and a 111 time form rating. So I guess it kind of checks out, but again, I'm having a difficult time really looking at this race and falling in love with it as a whole, especially when a horse like Dreammaker, who, look, I was wrong. I liked everything about that, and you look at that Fairgrounds race, visually, I like it. I like the field that he beat based on the numbers, what they came back to do, that he was awful in this race. He never, ever, at any moment, looked like he was going to do any running. Mark Casse has said that they're going to put blinkers on him for his next start. Maybe that'll do the trick. He was goofy with his lead changes off the far turn. I just thought he was terrible. I don't know what to do with a horse like Dreammaker coming out of this. But again, he's another reason that I look at the race as a whole and I'm like, what the hell happened here? Is this going to be a very productive race or is it not? And I wish I had a more definitive feel on it. Maybe you guys do. Let me know beneath the video player on YouTube or at Bernier_Matt. Because again, Tacitus, really like him. Think his prospects are very, very high going forward. The rest of the field, I don't know what to do with them. As far as next starts are concerned, Tacitus, according to Bill Mott, any one of the big three, any one of the 3 big ones for Tacitus, the Wood, the Bluegrass, or the Arkansas Derby, Mott was quoted saying, we might wind up going to Aqueduct because he's already run twice in New York, but we'll see. And you know what? I would have no issue with that. I'd have no issue if they ran this horse anywhere. He has his points. That final race is going to be a means to an end to get him to Kentucky, ready to go. And I say to Kentucky. If they run him in the Bluegrass, obviously he's already in Kentucky. But you get what I'm saying. The interesting thing here is to keep in mind just sort of that trend throughout the years of this Derby point system. The only Kentucky Derby winners have won. Only horses winning their final prep have won the Kentucky Derby, gone on to win it. No one that has run well and won races prior to that final round of 100-point Derby preps, and then let's say they run second or third. None of those second or third place finishers have come back to then win the Kentucky Derby. You've basically needed to win one of those final, 5, 6 races? If you don't, realistically, based on this, and I know it's a relatively small sample, only 6, 7 years that this thing's been in, or 8 years, however long it's been, but it is what it is. If you haven't won one of those final preps, you have not been able to go on and win the Kentucky Derby. We'll find out how this horse, Tacitus, moves forward. Outshine for Pletcher. The Wood is apparently his most likely next starting off point. And really, when you look at the race as a whole, it's not a terrible race, relatively close to the hot pace. But boy, I wanted to see some better finish than what we saw in this spot. He's one I'm going to keep an eye on going forward, but I a little wishy-washy on that as a whole. And as far as win-win-win is concerned, Michael Trombetta afterward quoted saying, "I'd have to think about the Wood or the Bluegrass is next, but let's get him settled back here and see how he does." He's one that I still have a sneaky feeling is a one-turn horse, but he ran well enough in here that you owe it to yourself. Again, the connections, you're this far along, take one more chance. I get it, totally. May not have been a great effort, but take one more chance. If it doesn't work, then you have the Pat Day Mile. Then you have the Woody Stevens and all those races going forward. So this race as a whole, I don't really know what to do with it right now. I will say, though, Tacitus, I thought he'd be the one you want long-term. I didn't think he was the one you wanted on Saturday. I was wrong. I like Dreammaker. He was up the track. He never did any running. Tacitus, nice effort here. Certainly something you can build upon, and he's got beautiful connections all around. This is an interesting prospect going forward. Tacitus wins the Tampa Bay Derby with a 93 Beyer and a 117 Timeform US rating. Grade 3 Gotham up at Aqueduct on Saturday was New York's Kentucky Derby prep. Let's take a look at that field. Grade 3 event, one-turn mile, so it's a little bit of a peculiar situation. Don't know how much this is actually going to have a giant effect on a race like the Kentucky Derby, but you do have some horses that project anyway to go on and run in that final round of preps. Your post-time favorite was Instagram. This was the first time that we had seen this horse since, what, August of 2018? It's going to be his first start as a 3-year-old, first start away from Del Mar. Number of things going against him at a short price. There were some interesting alternatives should you have gone that direction, whether it was Mind Control or Much Better or High Cal, you name it. Ultimately, we had a pace meltdown, and one of those horses took advantage of it. Here's the stretch run of this year's Gotham.
Of the stretch, 3/4 in 109 and 1. Here's Instagram on the outside. Here's Mind Control down at the rail. 3 of them across the track with 1/8 of a mile to the finish. Mind Control down at the rail. Instagram on the outside. Much Better's in between those two. The 3 of them continue to battle it out. And here's High Cal making a late run on the extreme outside. They come for the finish. It is High Cal to win the Gotham. High Cal from way out of it.
High Cal gets the job done at odds of 4-1 over Mind Control, who runs second at 5-1, and defeated as your even money favorite is Instagram. He finishes third in the field of 8. Let's take a look at High Cal. He is 3 of 4 lifetime. He is a neck away from being a perfect 4 for 4. All 4 times in the exacta, just under $300,000 in career earnings. Owned and bred by Shadwell Farm, I should say owned by Shadwell Stable, bred by Shadwell Farm LLC in Kentucky, trained by Karen McLaughlin. Ridden to victory by Rajiv Mirage, and you can take a look at the pedigree at the bottom of the horse card. He is by Daher, out of a distorted humor mare named Sabla. 95 Beyer speed figure, 118 Timeform US rating in this race for High Cal. In the Gotham, you take a look at Timeform, quarter, half, 3/4 splits, all color-coded red, to no one's surprise when the fractions are 22 and 1, 44 and 2, 9 and 1 for 3/4. It, again, far from a surprise. Also, you know, it's a little bit of, depends how you want to look at it. High Cal did come on with a nice run at the end. He finished well. It sounds like the next logical step, he'll go on to the Wood Memorial at 1 mile and 1/8, find out about the distance. I'm not totally sold given the fact that he's a half to Takaful. We know what he was all about, big time sprinter. Him finishing in 24.94, again, to me is a little bit of an optical illusion. Simply because that's not a great finishing time, considering we're only going 1 mile here. I'd like to see a little bit of a better finish than that, because if there is a more moderate pace, how does he overcome that? Again, I don't want to knock a horse that really hasn't done anything wrong, but I'm just curious about that going forward. How did it look like he finished as well as he did simply because everybody else came to a crawl? That's kind of my sneaking suspicion. He ran a fine race, don't get me wrong. I just don't know that I necessarily love him going forward at longer distances especially. Shorter distances totally makes sense. Mind Control, 93 buyer, 117 time form rating. He finished in 25.96, and I know many people have looked at it and said, oh, big effort from him, loved everything about it. It was a good race, don't get me wrong, but again, if you want to say that High Cal had some things go for him, Mind Control had just as much go for him as well, because he was more sort of, he maybe had a 2-length head start on a horse like High Cal, but maybe it was even more than 2 lengths, I don't know. But the idea of, you know, you didn't really finish with gusto, with a flourish. Now, it sounds like he is also going on to the Wood Memorial. I don't know about his prospects stretching out in distance either. I kind of like him going a little bit shorter, and I know he did run well going longer. So it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that he could do it, but he to me feels like a one-turn kind of horse. A shorter distance, 7/8 of a mile, one-turn miler. But again, his finish leaves a little bit to be desired for me. I know perhaps he was a little bit closer to the front end than a horse like High Cal was, but I still wanted to see a better finish out of him, especially when you consider he finishes just a shade under 26 seconds. The third place finisher, Instagram, finishes a shade over 26. I tweeted about it on Saturday night, and I stand by it. What did I miss? Why do so many people dislike this horse? And the reaction I got on Twitter was predominantly because the owner put a good horse away, despite what what somebody like Jerry Hollendorfer had to say. Put the horse away because we just want to sit on him. We want to wait. We know we have a good horse. We want to run him as a 3-year-old. Well, I understand that. And you're right. It's not a great look. It's not something that you necessarily want to root for. But do you hold that against the horse? And also, in a vacuum, so many people saying, oh, he's no good, terrible effort, poor effort. He's not nearly as good as everybody made him out to be. In a vacuum, if you took the name Instagram away and I told you that you have a horse that has not started since the beginning of August, his first start is coming at the beginning of March, first start as a 3-year-old, first time starting, forget about out of his jurisdiction, away from one track in particular. This is his first time, and you're going to ship across the country to New York, where the weather, for New York standards, at this time of year, it was fine, but for him, it's a complete 180 compared to what he's used to in Southern California. If you took the name Instagram away, and you looked and saw how he ran here, most logical people would look at it and go, this is a good starting off point. He can certainly move forward from this, but because his name is Instagram and you know the backstory, that takes away from the effort here, I think that's foolish. I thought this was a good effort from Instagram. This is something he can build on. Sounds like Hollendorfer said he deserves to be considered on the Derby trail. So I would imagine his next start is going to be in one of those big final preps, whether it's the Santa Anita Derby or down at Oaklawn or back in the Wood or, you know them all at this point. I don't need to ration them out for you or rehash them. I just think it's unfair to the horse and also a little bit silly to sit there and say, he's not that good. I mean, what do you want? He was beat by a length and a half off of a 6-month layoff or whatever it was. It's almost 7 months maybe. And he was the closest one to that hot pace. Sure, he never looked like a winner really at any point, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was rusty coming off the bench. This was not a bad effort. If you think it was a bad effort, I think you're wrong. And let's get to the 4th place finisher, who I was stunned by how fast they went, with much better. And I know he was in a nice sort of comfortable rhythm, but for a horse that potentially had distance questions going into this race at a mile, to cut out 44-2 for the half and 9-1 for 3/4, those numbers are faster than the Tom Fool, which was run just a race prior with nice older sprinters. And he was only defeated by a little more than a length and a half. This is a giant effort from much better. I think he's going to be that kind of horse. So many people have talked about it on Twitter, and I agree. He's going to end up being a Woody Stevens player, an H. Allen Jerkins player, maybe a Pat Day Mile kind of horse. So many of those things. I don't like him going longer. To me, a mile, I think he actually acquitted himself nicely. A little, let's say he goes 45 as opposed to 44-2, because by the way, at 45 he would still probably have the lead, given the fact that nobody was within shouting distance of him. If he does that, I think he probably wins this race, just based on that sort of rationing out of a little bit of extra energy at the end. He's only defeated by a length and a half. I think he's going to be a nice one-turn horse for Baffert. I was just stunned at how fast he went early on. So it may sound like I'm sort of knocking the top 2 finishers. Perhaps. But I think it is just sort of a bigger view of handicapping and looking at this saying, you know, that kind of pace situation going 2 turns against better horses or horses that are more suited for 2 turns, I don't know that all that perfect storm is going to present itself. Fine effort from High Cal, fine effort from Mind Control. I think these 3rd and 4th place finishers ran the best races, both Instagram and Much Better. I think Much Better ran the best race in the entire race in the Gotham, no question about it. But Instagram, I don't think he's that far behind as far as who ran the best race here. And I think the top 2 took advantage of good circumstances. Fine efforts, though, all around. At the end of the day, they all might be 1-turn types, but it sounds like most of them are at least going to get another opportunity going forward here. High Cal takes advantage of a wicked pace situation in the Gotham, gets the job done. 95 buyer, 118 time form rating. We'll see him again in the Wood Memorial. Let's take a look at the Jeff Ruby Stakes. This is going to be a very brief look at this race, but we will go over it. Let's take a look at the field. 11 of them signed on. Post-time favorite. All eyes were on Some Like It Hot Brown, 3-5 in the wagering. He had won the John Battaglia prior to this race. He was the heavy favorite. He deserved to be the favorite. And I like that he had a little bit of versatility. This race just felt like it was going to set up well for him. A little bit of a different running style than I had anticipated going into the race, but nonetheless, he was much the best. Here's the stretch run of the Jeff Ruby Stakes.
And now Skywire has kicked it into top gear as they straighten away in the Jeff Ruby Stakes. And it's all Some Like It Hot Brown still finding. Dynamic Racer is running a huge one by the furlong pole. It's Some Like It Hot Brown, Dynamic Racer, and way out wide finishing full run. Here comes Moonster. They're in the final furlong. And Some Like It Hot Brown, the Battaglia winner, is going to take the Jeff Ruby Stakes in front running style. And he stops the timer in 1:52 flat.
Some Like It Hot Brown gets the job done at 3-5 over a couple of big numbers. The runner-up Dynamic Racer at 45-1 and the 3rd place finisher Moonster at almost 60-1. Let's take a look at Some Like It Hot Brown. 3 of 7 lifetime, 3 other times in the money. $363,478 in career earnings, owned by Sky Chai Racing LLC and Sand Dollar Stable LLC. Trained by Mike Maker, bred by Hot Pig Stables and Sand Dollar Stables in New York. Ridden victory by Tyler Gaffalione this time around. You can see the pedigree. One of my favorite pedigrees, just from a name standpoint. He's by Big Brown, out of a Tappet mare named Marilyn Monroe. Get it? God, I love it. It's brilliant. And the name Some Like It Hot Brown. It's perfect. Perfect. This is how all names should be. 108 time form rating, 83 buyer for Some Like It Hot Brown. The fractions in this race, all of them color-coded red according to Timeform US, the quarter, the half, the three-quarter, and even the mile call. He didn't visually finish all that well. He finished in 14:21, but I think there were some pieces here that you need to factor in. We'll start off with Mike Maker's quote after the race, saying Tyler said he was ducking from the whip a little bit, but he had a lot of horse left. With these 2 races, we'll look at the Bluegrass at Keeneland, which at this point, why not? You're playing with house money with the horse like this. I think you go on with it. He's earned his points. You go on to a spot like Keeneland. If it works, great. You go on to the Derby. If it doesn't, you know you've got a horse that can run very well on turf. He can run on synth. He can run anywhere, basically. We'll find out about the main track. I think this is a really nice horse. The numbers would suggest he's a little bit slow right now, or a lot bit slow compared to some of the other big horses. But again, keep in mind, there are so many different things that go into it. Difficult to get big numbers in like synthetic races just simply because of just the way that the synthetic surface tends to play. It's very frequently kind of on the slower, duller side. So I'm not going to hold his numbers against him right now. I think this is a nice horse. I love the versatility that he has. Another reason I say that 14:21 final 8th is not super alarming to me, despite the fact that he was drifting a little bit. You have that quote from Maker talking about Gaffalione saying that he was ducking around a little bit because of the whip. There's also a 20-mile-an-hour headwind. So when they turned for home, he was basically running into a wall of wind. At that point, when you cut out fractions 23 and 347 for a half, 10 and 3 for 3/4, I'm not going to hold it against him. I thought he ran really well here. He did what needed to be done, and Tyler rode him like he was the best. Go on with it. Keep him out in the clear, and don't even bring any sort of potential issues into play. I thought all around, this is an all-around team effort. I thought he was well trained coming into this. I thought Maker picked great spots to bring this horse back in. Gaffalione rode him well, and the connections deserve plenty of credit here. The ownership group, as well as the breeders. If you're looking at anybody else in here, I don't think this is going to have a heck of a lot of impact outside of something like a Hot Brown on races leading into the Derby. You're looking for another horse that maybe you just want to keep an eye on. I would say perhaps Moonster. Now, Moonster, you'll initially look at it and say, well, he had a big pace to run at, and sure, he was finishing well. He came home in 13:67, far and away the fastest final 8 in this race. But I do think when you consider that 3 of the top 4 finishers all were 1, 2, 3 throughout the run, and Moonster was really the only one that made up any significant ground, also coupling that with the fact that Moonster had never run on anything other than a main track, other than dirt. So this is his first start on synth. Does make me wonder if all of a sudden his next start you see them try him on turf somewhere. I like the way that he finished. I'm not suggesting he's going to end up being a superstar, but if you're looking for someone outside of the obvious, some like at Hot Brown, maybe it's a horse like Moonster that you want to just keep an eye on going forward wherever he should show up next. No question about it, though. The star of the race was Some Like It Hot Brown. He earns an 83 Byron, a 108 Timeform US rating. Sounds like it's on to the Bluegrass at Keeneland, and from there, who knows? But I like this horse and I like the connections. Now we'll dive into this sort of quick hits montage section of this. Now, normally going forward, just something to keep in mind. Most of these montage quick hits races, they're going to be restricted to graded stakes races, unless there are other noteworthy sort of performances in listed races. So in this spot here, you're going to get the Hillsborough, the Tom Fool, the Honeybee, and the Florida Oaks. Those are graded races. But then there are going to be 2 more races that I'll quickly touch on, the Silks Run as well as the Hot Springs. One of those at Gulfstream, one of those at Oaklawn, because to me, 2 noteworthy performances in each of those. So let's throw it into the montage and we'll come back and I'll get you with some quick hits.
The racetrack, and now they cut to the wire. Hawksmoor is still the target. Phantom opening up on the outside. Rimska looks for a seam and now finds it, and she's exploding late. Down to the wire, Hawksmoor. Here comes Rimska with a powerful surge, running down the 6-year-old mare. In front and going away. Hawksmoor might have hung on for second. Over.
The field comes off the turn and enters the stretch. Here's Bavaro on the outside. Skylar's Scramjet battles on. Syndergaard and Duchère on the extreme outside is kicking in. Here is Duchère to take over the lead as they move for the 16th pole, and Duchère is pouring it on here in the Tom Fool. Duchère, a much the best winner. He won by 7 lengths. Life in Shambles came on for second. Then it was Bavaro.
Starlight, but they'll all have to fly to catch Motion Emotion. And here's one that is flying. It is Bizwax in the center of the racetrack. Motion Emotion only a length and a half in front of Bizwax in second. Then comes Power Gal in third and Chocolate Kisses. Motion Emotion, Bizwax, Chocolate Kisses dives to the inside, and she's going to make the last run to win. The Honeybee goes to Chocolate Kisses over Motion Emotion.
Swings to the center of the racetrack, and they find 7 across the track. Mega Fortune, Winter Sunset from between horses. Concrete Rose is down the center of the racetrack, and Blowout inside the final furlong. Concrete Rose, here comes Blowout on the outside. Concrete Rose in a blanket finish. Concrete Rose will prevail over a fast
Price tries to counterpunch from second. Imprimis into the clear. Look at him go now. Imprimis, Paco hasn't thought about asking him, and he's up to take the lead. Wow. Imprimis moving away. He's 2-1. Peony Price is fighting hard and trying to get a hold on to second, but Imprimis in an absolute stroll. He won by 3 while never asked.
Whitmore's on the move. Welder and Share the Upside. Whitmore in the center of the track, now only a half length from Share the Upside and Welder. And here comes Whitmore to below on by. Whitmore now 2 in front. Share the Upside and Welder continue their battle, but now it's for second and third. 3 in a row in the Hot Springs for Whitmore. Whitmore won by a length.
All right, time for the quick hits. Nothing sort of profound here in these pieces, but just some observations. The Hillsborough, really big effort from Rimska, but you compare that, or not compare that, but you couple that with a perfect pocket trip throughout. You know, a horse trained by Chad Brown on grass in a graded stakes race. She's supposed to finish the way that she did. Big effort from her. The Florida Oaks, just kind of a jumbled finish. I don't have anything special to add to that race for those 3-year-old fillies. Many of them, that was their first start as a 3-year-old. Just nothing more than a sort of means to an end. I would expect bigger and better things from a number of those fillies going forward. The Honeybee, an insane pace set by Motion Emotion. She ran way too well to lose. Just got run down late in the shadow of the wire. A giant effort. The only concern for me is again, all of her runs, her big runs anyway, have come outright on the lead. And what happens when she doesn't get the lead? If she runs that fast in the route races, she's not going to have to worry about anybody else on the front end and out sprinting her. The problem is then, do you have enough left in the tank at the, to finish the deal? Well, that was a big effort from her regardless. And again, down the road, I'd like to see her, does she have that stalking and rating gear? Because if she doesn't, this could unfortunately be a little bit of a trend for her. The Tom Fool crazy duel on the front end with the 3 favorites, or 3 of the choices anyway, helped set things up for Dushare. But to be fair, Dushare ran a giant race. And the form of the General George held up very well, because Life in Shambles comes along and rounds out your exacta there at a big price. So nice effort from those 2 horses exiting that race down at Laurel Park, helped by that duel on the front end. The Silks run, I was blown away by Imprimis. That performance was phenomenal when you consider Vision Perfect and Pay Any Price are in there, and the fractions that were set. And Imprimis is sitting there. Yes, he did trip out, but boy, he was not a loser at any step in that race. He was visually awesome. I would love to know. I'd love to know if he can stretch out. They've yet to do it, I believe. Throughout his career, I think he has only been kept to 1-turn races. I would love to know. Just find out if you can get a mile with him. Because talent-wise, he's exceptional. Find out if you can get a mile. If you can't, you turn him back, you're good to go. You know you've got a giant turf sprinter. I'd love to know if he can get a flat mile, because if that's the case, he would be a fascinating horse added to that division. As far as the Hot Springs is concerned, a nice effort from Whitmore. Nice return spot. I think he should build upon that, and bigger and better things to come, whether it's the Count Fleet down there at Oaklawn, whether it's that Grade 1 Churchill Downs on Derby undercard. You get a number of places for him. Whitmore, he's still got it. Still got that fastball for him. So there you go, some quick hits there. Let's roll right into the weekend's best as far as Beyer speed figure performances are concerned. 3-year-old males on dirt, High Cal, the 95 in the Gotham. 3-year-old fillies on dirt, Chocolate Kisses. You just saw her run down the pace setter in there, Motion to Motion, with an 82 Beyer in the Honeybee down at Oaklawn. 3-year-old males on grass, Largent, an 84 and a maiden special weight on grass at Gulfstream. 3-year-old fillies on turf. We have a tie between Concrete Rose and Panther. Hit both are in 80s. 1 in the Florida Oaks, 1 in a maiden special down at Gulfstream. Older males on dirt, you just saw Dushare roll in the Tom Fool to a 105 Beyer. Older fillies and mares on dirt, Divine Miss Gray on Sunday wins the Heavenly Prize with a 96 Beyer. Older males on grass, Imprimis with a 108 in Silk's run. It was just a phenomenal performance. And older fillies and mares on turf, Rimska. We saw her with that big powerful kick at the end, get the job done in Hillsborough with a 97 Beyer. There you have it. The weekend's best as far as Beyer speed figure performances are concerned. Quick look at what's on tap for this week on DRFTV. The usual. DRF Bets races of the day. You'll have Pedigree Reports. You'll have Derby Watch. You'll have Oaks Countdown. You'll have the Timeform US Pacecast. You will have the preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show. And you'll have the latest edition of Out of the Gate. All sorts of good stuff along with stakes previews. Video.drf.com as well as the Daily Racing Forms YouTube channel. Those are 2 spots where you can find this podcast, the recap edition as well as the preview edition. YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com as well as Spotify. Wherever you are watching on any of those platforms, subscribe, rate, and review. Questions, comments, concerns, either beneath the video player on YouTube or to me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Thank you for listening. Whatever you got going for you for the rest of the week until I come back with the preview edition. Best of luck, however you play, whatever you play, wherever you play. This has been the recap edition of the Matt Bernier Show.